whole supply chain is a complex web of constantly changing technologies and relationships, from beef producers who are often in very remote areas to processors and retailers in towns and cities. It is challenging to maintain the ideal levels of communication that benefit all parts of the chain with the aim of delivering the best possible beef product to a demanding customer. The Bullseye project is funded by the West Australian Government's Grower Group Research and Development Program, administered through the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development's Agricultural Sciences Research and Development Fund. It is hosted by the Gascoyne Catchments Group in partnership with the recognised biosecurity groups and producer groups of the Southern Rangelands. The value chain tour was organised to enable pastoral beef producers to gain an appreciation of the complete supply chain from their own beef production system right through to a high-quality retail outlet. Beef producers travelled from many parts of the state to Dandaragan to rendezvous with a tour bus that would take them to a series of stops, including a feedlot, breeding operation, processor, meat research unit, and boutique meat retailer. This film is one of 3 short films made to capture the important information gleaned during the tour. Here, you hear how 2 backgrounders service the needs of pastoral breeders and how a pastoralist family has used modern technology to dramatically reduce the body weight shrinkage when moving cattle from station to backgrounder or directly to market. The tour began at Red Gum Village, Dandaragan, where talks were given by Craig Forsyth and Murray Gray. Craig Forsyth has been a highly respected leader of the WA cattle industry for many years and is the pioneer backgrounder who has been backgrounding pastoral cattle on subtropical grasses for nearly 20 years. Through Craig's commitment to strong communication, he has developed effective working relationships with many pastoralists. Craig sits on the board of the Mingenew Irwin Group and MLA's Western Australian Livestock Research Council.
The biggest challenge is the ability to be able to build up that trust, and that doesn't happen overnight. And in a way, I think it's up to the pastoralists to make sure that they keep or identify a person that could background, but keep that momentum going, keep the communication and the dialogue happening between each other. And then it's up to them to form a relationship where, rightio, this is our costs, this is what we expect, this is what we'd like the cattle to be doing, what can you do, where are they sales are going, have some sort of form of direction and the time frame that those cattle can go off. So it's just not about putting cattle within a backgrounder and then expecting them they'll go off, at a certain time. It's a matter of making sure that there's a direction and identifying different markets for different cattle. It is a challenge to make sure that there is to find enough backgrounders, because of course you've got the challenges with the backgrounders that are making money out of cropping. You've got the challenges that the backgrounders are still, if they've got sheep involved, there's good profit in sheep. The ability and the effort should be put in to say, look, to the backgrounders, when they've got perennial grasses, the best chance of utilising those perennial grasses is by fattening cattle. And that is the symbiosis that occurs between the perennial grasses and annual grasses, but it also occurs between the backgrounder and the pastoralist. When the cattle are coming down to a backgrounder, there's a couple of things that need to be done properly. They need to be dehorned correctly. And if cattle are going to be there for 5 or 6 months and little bulls that have got a bud on, by the time they get ready for sale, those buds could have grown into decent horns. Then the sale, or those cattle are hard to sell, so they have to be dehorned again. There's a benefit in the pastoralists being able to preg test the cattle so that you know exactly what cattle are pregnant, and if cattle are just pregnant, you can PG them and get them ready for a heifer market, or you can even breed from those heifers in a controlled mating syndrome and send them back up to the station. And also is to be able to even go through the little things like mouthing the cattle and saying, look, I'm sending down cattle that are 400 kilos, there's a couple of 2 tooths in there, there's the odd 4 tooth, but most of them are milk tooth, And then the smaller ones, the 200 kilos, are generally zero tooth anyway. But the funny thing is, there are some pastoral cattle that are 300 kilos that are 6 teeth, and they're very hard to sell.
Murray Gray manages the Gray family farm at Mora, which is run in collaboration with the family's Glenforrie station in the Ashburton district, managed by his sister Atisha. In 2013, the Gray family's strong submission to the Precision Pastoral Management Systems project enabled Glenforrie to be part of the project testing the remote walkover weigher that is now being marketed by TrueTest. Through the Grays' commitment to rigorous recording of body weights at their station yards, they've been able to identify strong financial gains by using the remote walkover weigher's auto draft facility to draft off sale animals in the paddock and truck them directly to market. This avoids the additional 2% shrinkage sustained by handling the stock at the station yards.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're finding we're getting some real dollars in pocket benefit from having the walkover weigher, being able to monitor those the livestock weight gains, and respond accordingly. So being able to make the most of opportunities to sell cattle at their peak weight or peak sale value, rather than having to just go with a bit of an average. You'll get some that are ready and some that are too far gone and some that haven't come on enough when you're trying to fill a truck. And knowing exactly what you've got on hand, when the agent rings and asks what you've got available, you can sell the exact animals that you want to sell and the exact number. Obviously, I mean, we know shrinkage is there. We allow for it in transport. Didn't really allow for it through the handling process, and that breaking of routine was what we discovered was a really big, a big sort of hidden cost that was hiding in our operation. 2.5% shrinkage on every handling is a fairly large amount when you extrapolate that across a herd. So to be able to manage our animals more in a more targeted fashion, targeting the specific animals that we wanted to sell rather than having to handle a whole mob to do it, were some huge benefits. We've got 2 units in operation. One's operating in a holding paddock, predominantly on sale animals. The other one's operating in our replacement heifer herd. The payback period on the sale animal unit is drastically reduced, predominantly because there are more animals going over the unit, but also because they are a shorter term prospect. The value in those animals is being realised straight away. The value in our replacement heifers, whilst is still tangible in a short term, is especially being felt longer term, as those animals are having more calves, they're calving more regularly, and we're able to keep them in better condition throughout the start of their breeding life. So the payback period for the shorter term animals, the sale animals, I worked out at around 10 months for a $35,000 investment, and the payback for in the breeder herd, the replacement heifer herd, was around 3 years. In utilising through the project phase, we were utilising pastures from space and measuring the NDVI as a roughie on feed on offer. And then correlating that against the weight performance of the animals. It challenged my feed budgeting abilities a bit. It challenged some of the preconceived notions that I had and the timelines that I was setting. But ultimately, it's meant that we can better maintain the condition of the animals whilst minimising degradation of the land system by moving those animals out of that land system once the feed available drops below what they require. So instead of hanging on and flogging country out, we're shifting those animals onto fresh pasture, fresh paddock that's been spelled, that's ready to receive them, and then that paddock is allowed to regenerate. Absolutely, we're seeing our country improve fairly drastically through that process. We're seeing improvements through better grass response. Grass is beginning to prosper in areas that they previously weren't inhabiting at all. Better coverage. We're leaving sort of more leaf litter, more cover on the ground. allowing that next season to a better seed set, better germinations. So the walkover weigher, its help has been in identifying when the pasture is getting to a point where it can no longer sustain the animals that are there, and generally speaking, that's when those plants are at the bottom of what would be considered a phase 2. So they've lost the bulk of their flag leaf, but they are by no, they're not sort of disintegrating at the clump level or in the root base. So there's plenty of energy left in the root reserve, in the root stores, and there's still substantial stalk available to regerminate when the moisture's available. We found the walkover weigher really useful in our from a business viewpoint in being able to target animal gains, being able to sell animals when they're at their peak value, instead of whether they've either gone past their peak value or they're yet to reach it. We can give accurate numbers to agents when orders are available, and can supply in a timely manner. 3 to 5 days we can have the animals available to sell, and so that's been a drastic improvement on our bottom line. The shrinkage was something that came out of left field a bit. We expected in transport. We must admit we didn't expect it in the handling process. We were seeing shrinkages of between 2 and 2.5% across the herd. Quite often we're handling 400 or 500 animals to only to sell 100 out of that mob. So there was a lot of kilos being lost across that mob for no gain.
The next morning, the group moved on to nearby Joanna Plains backgrounding operation. Johnny Dicchiera is the General Manager at Central Agri Group and manages the grain-based backgrounding facility and feedlot at Joanna Plains, Cataby. Backgrounding provides a critically important contribution to the pastoral beef supply chain, and the Bullseye Steering Committee is pleased that Johnny recently accepted the invitation to join the committee. Annually, the Joanna Plains backgrounding facility inducts over 40,000 head of cattle. In 2017, Central Agri Group, Joanna Plains, won the prize for the best MSA producer in the grain-fed category in WA. As the bus drove quietly down the lanes between the 4-hectare pens, we clearly identified that all cattle were settled, comfortable, healthy and content in this backgrounding environment. Johnny explained that they use 5 standard rations designed by professional nutritionists. Cattle are introduced to grain-based diets at an optimum rate to avoid issues such as acidosis, but also progress quickly to higher protein and energy rations, resulting in optimum daily weight gains. CAG also work closely with their customers to determine the required turn-off weights and any required specifications. This allows the feed team at CAG Joanna Plains to ensure that all cattle which are inducted into the facility are entered into the most appropriate feeding programs to ensure cattle meet specifications for the market they are destined for.
Welcome to Central Agri Group Joanna Plains. We're a home away from home for cattle, and almost 95% and sometimes 100% of the cattle that we have backgrounded here and we feed daily are pastoral cattle. We do a good job. Last year, 2017, we won Most Outstanding Beef Producer in the grain-fed category. We're not your traditional type feedlot. We're a backgrounding facility. Each of our 52 pens is about 4 hectares in size, giving the cattle plenty of space, plenty of room. They're not on top of each other. They transition well from that pastoral type environment into that large area. Very quickly sort out their social status in the pen, and transition well onto our ration, which has been well developed, and working closely with our nutritionists to make sure that we've got hit those targeted weight gains. But on average, we see sort of an average daily weight gain of around that 1.6, 1.7 kilos, but we have ADGs up at 1.9, 2 kilos. So we're able to estimate a daily cost per head per day to our customers before their cattle enter our facility, and that cost also includes our initial induction fee. So all cattle coming in to our facility receive a 71 vaccination, a fly and lice, and a drench, as well as a visual ID tag, clearly identifying that customer's cattle. Also makes it easy for when the customer wants to come to our facility and check on their cattle and see how they're doing. It's very easy for them to recognise their cattle because it's got their customer code on the visual ID. Our facility is full of all the different breeds of cattle, and a lot of cattle with high tropical content, and a lot of those cattle are destined for processing establishments. You know, we have cows coming in, we have weaners coming in, we have cows in poor condition, we have steers that enter a growing program, steers that enter a sort of a fattening program, heifers, so mixed breeds, mixed sex, we cover all bases here. So we have a lot of aged, poor condition cows coming in, which you know, we add significant value to. They come in quite poor condition, and obviously all suitable to be tracked and according to all animal welfare standards and industry best practice. But we've proven that we can you know, help that animal along and really you know, feed those types of cattle well, and they end up leaving our facility well covered, completely different cattle. With that trading opportunity, you know, we've found that customers that we've got great relationships with, agents that frequent the premises checking up on customer cattle. And more so recently, our customers that we're feeding cattle for are presented with different market opportunities in those other customers frequenting our facility. So we've sort of been pleased to be able to highlight different options to our customers that have their cattle on feed here, and with those different opportunities, we adjust our feeding regime, because they may have come in for, you know, a 60-day program, and someone spotted an opportunity with their cattle, and the cattle have been sold and changed hands while they're here in our facility, and then that program may change and we feed accordingly. We find that the pastoralists that are really spending a lot of time on their mustering techniques, yard weaning, and also preparation for transport makes a huge difference to how the cattle are delivered in here to us, and then how we transition to providing that service and feeding those cattle.
The backgrounding of cattle is definitely what we need to look into. We don't have a lot of options on the Nullarbor. Joanna Plains is definitely an option. Borello's definitely for older cows, stud bulls that broken pizzles, you know, things like that, definitely. Trying to steer clear of Musho if we can, so any other competition or any other options is always going to help the industry. Another thing that we've picked up is that I strongly believe that grain-fed now is on its way out, talking to different people, and the grass-fed is the way that we're going to have to start looking at potentially how we can do that, and maybe backgrounding in a grass-fed situation, but we've got to do some more research on it, obviously. We've always been looking at setting up a backgrounding facility at the farm. Small pens was what we were going to go for. Joanna Plains showed us now that the small pens is out. You need to go large pens, which is fair enough. So I'll be doing some more research.